I'm Shuey and I'm going to show you some of the tips and tricks that I've learned with 30 years experience cooking on Webers. None of the lame tips like use a thermometer to check the internal temp of your meat. Yeah, because you tried using a hammer and that didn't work. These are real tips created over 30 years of using Webers, and these are actually going to help you barbecue better. So sit back, grab a drink or two, and let's get into it. Tip number one, this is the number one question I get asked all the time. Is my beer timer accurate? It's like most things in barbecue. It's only a recommendation. 30 minutes per beer, that's how my beer timer works. Fixation beers, obviously. And for those of you who need to follow my beer time to watch one of my videos, this is a 1 beer video. So, crack a can, get into it. Tip number two, this one's high on the list as well. When I dump my charcoal chimney full of fuel into my charcoal baskets, why does one basket burn out before the other one during the cook? The answer was because it wasn't fully alight yet. You'll place the fuel at the top of the chimney that wasn't fully alight yet into one basket, and then place the fuel that was at the bottom of the chimney that's fully alight into the other. This is why you'll always see me state to place the charcoal baskets on the charcoal grill together and then dump the charcoal in. And then you can separate them. How are we going so far? Not a bad tip so early on in the list. Tip number three, the next question I get asked so much as well. How do I set up my vents to reach a certain temperature? No matter the fuel, there are some basics when it comes to vent control. The lid vent, this is very important, so listen up, stays open throughout the entire cook. It's your exhaust vent, let it breathe. It's going to draw that heat and that smoke over your food and out through that vent. The bowl vents are how you control heat. By closing them off, you are starving the fuel source of oxygen and your temp will lower. The same as if you open the bowl vents, you are allowing more oxygen in and your temp will rise. Allow a good 20 to 30 minutes before each vent adjustment because it takes that sort of time for the temp to settle. If you keep playing with the vents and not allowing the temp enough time to settle, you'll be chasing the temps throughout all of your cook. So make small changes to your bowl vent and give it time to settle. Tip number four, this one's a good one. Where do I position the lid vent during a cook? It depends on the cook. Now, using the roasting method with 2 charcoal baskets, I will swap it 50-50. I'll leave the lid vent on one side for the first half of the cook, and then I'll flip it over to the other side for the last half of the cook. It doesn't matter if you go from side to side or if you go from top to bottom, as long as you split it halfway between the cook. Now, if you don't do that, one side of your chicken will be cooked perfectly and the other side will be charcoal. Now for rotisserie cooking, you want the lid vent on one side of your food, and it can stay put for the entire cook because the food is constantly spinning and it's going to cook evenly. When using the dual zone cooking setup, that is when you have your fuel source to one side of that charcoal grate, either in a charcoal basket, a JG barbecue offset plate, a slow and sear, minion method, or using the snake method. Now the lid vent stays on the opposite side of our lit fuel, and when using the snake method you are going to have to adjust where that position is. As the snake burns around, just slowly move the lid. When using a kettle cone, a vortex, or 2 charcoal baskets together in the center of that charcoal grate, I always recommend turning the lid 1/3 of the way during any cook. So for a 30-minute cook, every 10 minutes, turn it 1/3 of the way around. But did you notice on every setup, the lid vent stayed wide open? Tip number 5, this is the next most asked question I'm always getting. How do I stop massive fluctuations on windy days? By placing a foil pan on your charcoal grate at the start of the cook and filling it with hot water. The hot water will not absorb any heat from your fuel source. But the fact is, water rises and lowers in temp slower than air does. So by adding a foil pan with hot water, you are going to minimize these harsh fluctuations caused by the wind. How easy is this? Nearly as easy as giving this video a like. Tip number 6, and this one is a good one. I've overshot my temperature by adding too much lit fuel at the start of the cook Or I've had the lid off for way too long and allowed so much oxygen to get in there and ramp up that heat. Or I'm using a new fuel that burns a lot hotter than what I'm used to. Let's grab that foil pan again and we're going to put it onto the charcoal grate. It's sometimes handy just to have it there in case you need it. By adding cold water to the pan, it will absorb the heat and the energy from your fuel source, dramatically dropping the temp in your Weber. Notice I said use cold water. That's because I've actually seen other people recommend you use hot water to lower the temp. We're now up to tip number 7. You're gonna like this one. So what do we do if it starts to rain? Build a barbecue area like I have. Seriously though, you have 2 options. You can hold an umbrella over your Weber and enjoy the elements. Grab that miracle foil pan again and put it on the handle of your Weber, squeeze it, and that is going to stop any rain getting inside your Weber. Now you may need to open the bowl vents slightly just to increase the temp if it is raining a lot. We're now up to tip number 8. Why can't I get the same smoke ring other people get? Or why is my food tasting bitter or overly smoky? Probably a few factors there. Quality of wood, which wood, how much wood, and how you prepared your Weber for smoking. Let's break these down. We'll start with quality of wood. Not all smoking woods are the same, and there's a lot of people out there thinking what they're selling is the best. And unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't even come close. Slow burn smoking wood supplies for the win here. Which wood to use? I use cherry a lot. It's an all-round smoking wood and it's great with anything. The chemical reaction that is created when you smoke meat is most drastic when you use cherry wood, and therefore it creates a larger smoke ring when you cut into your meat. A Weber is a small smoker, so too much smoke is a bad thing. 2 to 4 chunks spaced out about 50 mil apart is usually more than enough to get ample smoke flavour into your food. Now when you initially get your Weber set up and you add your lit fuel and your smoking wood, that white smoke billowing out is no good. Give the Weber a good 20 to 30 minutes for that white smoke to settle down to what we like to call thin blue smoke. You should barely be able to see it coming out of that lid vent, if at all. Then and only then is when you should put your meat in, because otherwise it's going to taste bitter and overly smoky. A steamy environment promotes smoke to adhere to your meat better. So remember using that hot water in the foil pan to stabilise our heat. That can also aid in creating a nice steamy environment to get a better smoke ring and a flavour out of our smoking wood. Apart from that, our taste buds are all different. Find a wood profile that you like and stick to it. Just remember, sometimes less is more. Tip number 9. How often do I clean my grills? Yes, it gets asked a lot. I actually clean my grills quite a lot. It sometimes doesn't look like it, but that's a fact. I'm barbecuing every day. I regularly scrape out my Webers and scrub the grills and wash them out. Now I do leave the grills alone after cooking on them. By leaving that oil on there, it sort of helps prevent that rust buildup that you can get. But in saying that, if you just leave your grills outside for 6 months in between using them, they're just going to rust up. So once they're cooled down, clean them off, give them an oil, store them away. Now before each cook, I scrub the grill with one of these brushes. Now I stopped using these bristle brushes years ago. Why? Because it's been proven that the bristles can dislodge, stick to your grill, and then in turn stick to your food. And if you don't notice it, you'll end up with one of those bristles in your lip, your tongue, your gum, or even worse, you won't even notice it and you'll swallow it. And the only way to get it out is surgery. So in my eyes, it's not worth the risk, especially when I'm cooking for my loved ones, which is my family and friends. So, like a good old mic drop, let's get rid of those bristle brushes. Tip number 10. Why doesn't my Komodo, smoker, drum, grill, Weber work the same as my mate's? I set it up exactly the same as he does because every smoker is different. I collect Weber kettles. If I lined every one of my 57 centimetre Weber kettles up, put the same amount of fuel into each one, set the vents exactly the same, I would be surprised if even 2 of them had an identical temp. Why? How well does the lid and the bowl seal? The vent and the bowl seal. and also the size of the charcoal or the briquettes that you're using. The biggest advice I can give anyone starting out is to master your grill. Do not chop and change from one fuel source to another hoping for similar results. Make small changes to any cook you do, and keep a book close by and document everything you do for each cook. Temp of the day, was it humid? What charcoal did you use? And even what smoking wood did you try? How heavy was the cut of meat? And how long had it been out of the fridge before you started cooking it? What internal temp was the meat when you took it out of the fridge as opposed to when you put it in the barbecue? This might sound silly. This is your barbecue. Learn to use it by using it. That's it. Real tips and advice that will hopefully help you barbecue better. As always, cheers for watching.